Imagine a secret hidden in plain sight for 2,000 years, a mystery wrapped in the ancient sacred scrolls of a nation that has survived against all odds. This is the story of the veil, a spiritual shroud draped by divine decree over the eyes of a chosen people. For millennia, the nation of Israel has moved through history with a profound sense of spiritual purpose, yet there remains a shadow, a mysterious and specific truth that seems to remain hidden. This is not a failure of intellect or a lack of devotion. Rather, it is a prophetic concealment intended for a specific season. The scriptures speak of a time when the heart of the people would experience a partial hardening, a divine and necessary pause in understanding that would allow the rest of the world to find their way home. Between the final echoes of the Old Testament prophets and the modern era, there lies a profound, heavy silence. It is the weight of Romans 11:25, a mystery that the Apostle Paul described as a temporary blindness until the promised fullness of the nations has come in. This silence is not empty, it is pregnant with anticipation. Throughout the centuries of exile and return, the true identity of the long-awaited Redeemer has remained deeply obscured, like a face seen through a glass darkly. The nation of Israel, resilient and seeking security, has built its identity on the laws and traditions of its ancestors, all while the central piece of their own prophetic puzzle remains hidden in the very texts they preserve with such reverence. To understand this mystery, one must look back to the plains of Canaan and the golden palaces of Egypt. Consider the archetype of Joseph, the beloved son who was betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery. In the courts of Pharaoh, Joseph rose to become a ruler, the one who held the keys to survival during a great famine. When his brothers finally stood before him, seeking bread to survive, they did not recognize the man in ornate Egyptian robes. To them, he was a stranger, a foreign ruler with a strange foreign language and an unfamiliar title. They saw a provider, but they did not see their brother. This is the prophetic shadow that has loomed over history. The Messiah, like Joseph, has been ruling in a seemingly foreign land, gathering the nations and saving the world from spiritual famine, while those closest to him by blood remain unaware of his true identity. In the heart of Jerusalem, the earnest modern seeker searches for meaning amidst the echoes of the past. The nation of Israel seeks security in a volatile world, longing for the Messiah who will bring lasting political peace and national restoration. Yet, there is a tension within the tradition itself. Deep within the scrolls of the prophet Isaiah lies the 53rd chapter, a text often referred to as the forbidden chapter. It describes a suffering servant, one who was despised and rejected, a man of sorrows acquainted with grief. This image contrasts sharply with the expectation of a mighty, conquering king, creating a historical and emotional burden that has lasted for generations. The diaspora, with its centuries of wandering and longing, has focused the national hope on a figure of power, often overlooking the humble one who bore the weight of their transgressions in silence. The emotional toll of this journey is immeasurable. For 2,000 years, the longing for redemption has been the heartbeat of the Jewish people, a collective prayer whispered at the Wailing Wall and carried across every continent. They have looked for a savior who fits a specific mold, someone who will finally end the endless cycle of persecution. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The air in the Holy Land is thick with a sense of impending prophetic change. The physical restoration of the land serves as a backdrop for a much deeper spiritual awakening. The mask that has covered the face of the Joseph of history is beginning to slip. The stranger who has governed the world's salvation for centuries is not a stranger at all. He is the beloved, long-lost brother, the one thought to be lost forever. The moment of recognition is drawing near, a moment that will shock the very foundations of the entire world and rewrite the destiny of a nation. Israel will finally realize that the Savior they sought in the future was the brother they missed in the past, leading to a revelation that no one saw coming. As the sun sets over the jagged horizon of the Judean wilderness, a new and unsettling atmosphere permeates the air. This is no longer the era of mere wandering. It is the onset of what the prophet Jeremiah described as the time of Jacob's trouble. The shadows of history are lengthening, casting a cold, isolating darkness over the nation of Israel. The sense of absolute isolation is palpable, as if the international community has slowly turned its back, leaving the nation to stand alone in a world that increasingly feels like a gathering storm. Jerusalem, the eternal epicenter of human hope and divine promise, now finds itself at the heart of a geopolitical whirlwind. Diplomats and world leaders offer human solutions to problems that defy logic. This is the central conflict where human wisdom reaches its limits, and the silence of the heavens begins to feel like a roar. In this pressure cooker of modern history, the nation of Israel is forced to confront a reality that cannot be managed by military strength or clever statecraft alone. Yet, even in this season of distress, a miraculous physical reality stands as a testament to ancient promises. Like the vision granted to Ezekiel in the Valley of Dry Bones, the nation has witnessed a resurrection that defies explanation. The bones have come together, and the land that was once a desolate wasteland now blooms with life. The physical restoration is complete, a vibrant and bustling reality that the world can see. However, as the prophet noted, the breath, the spiritual recognition, and the living spirit is not yet fully present. There is a profound hollowness in the midst of prosperity, a sense that the house is built, but the inhabitant has not yet been recognized. Within this landscape, the modern seeker within Israel begins to experience a quiet internal revolution. These individuals look past the noise of the nightly news and the rigid walls of tradition, asking questions that their ancestors rarely dared to whisper. They walk the streets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, feeling the pull of ancient scriptures while grappling with current isolation. Why does the world turn away? Why do the promises of peace slip through our fingers like desert sand? This internal struggle is a catalyst, driving the soul to look deeper into the scrolls. They start to wonder if there is a thread in the tapestry of their own story that could explain the paradox of their existence. This questioning is born of extreme vulnerability. History teaches that the hidden prophecy is often triggered in moments where only supernatural intervention can suffice. When every human door is locked and every earthly ally has vanished, the heart becomes fertile ground for a revelation that was previously unthinkable. It is in this crucible that the catalyst of redemption begins its work. The realization starts to dawn that the strength of the nation is not found in its strategic brilliance, but in a relationship that was severed long ago. As pressure mounts, the mask begins to slip from the face of history. Seekers find themselves drawn back to the Hebrew scriptures with new eyes. They look again at the suffering servant, the one who was pierced for transgressions. The traditional image of a purely political conqueror begins to crack, revealing the portrait of one who first had to suffer to earn the right to rule. The evidence in the ancient texts becomes impossible to ignore. The suffering servant and the triumphant king are the same person, separated only by the veil of time and the blindness of the heart. The world watches as a celestial shift occurs, a spiritual alignment that signals the end of an age-old concealment. The air is electric with the feeling that a 2,000-year-old secret is no longer a whisper in the shadows, but a truth about to be shouted from the rooftops. The recognition that has been delayed for centuries is now looming on the horizon, ready to burst forth and change everything. The atmospheric weight that once felt like a leaden sky begins to crack, not under the force of human artillery, but under the irresistible pressure of a divine downpour. It is the moment the prophet spoke of with a breath of holy anticipation, the long-awaited fulfillment of Zechariah's ancient vision. In the heart of Jerusalem, amidst ruins of failed diplomacy and the echoes of a lonely struggle, a spirit of grace and supplication is poured out upon the house of David and the inhabitants of the city. This is not a political treaty or a temporary ceasefire. It is a spiritual inundation that washes away the ancient stubbornness of the heart. The nation of Israel, weary from centuries of searching for a savior in the halls of power, suddenly finds its gaze fixed upon a figure that is eternal. They look upon the one whom they pierced, and in that instant, the veil, the divine decree of blindness that held sway for 2 millennia, shatters into 1,000 shards of forgotten shadow. What follows is an emotional breakdown of such depth that the world has no historical precedent for it. It is described as a great mourning, a weeping so profound and visceral that it mirrors the heartbreaking grief of a family losing an only son. Every household in the land, from the streets of Tel Aviv to the alleyways of the old city, is gripped by a cathartic realization. They realize the Messiah they expected and the long-lost brother they once rejected are one and the same. This is the fulfillment of the Joseph archetype. Just as Joseph stood before his terrified brothers and revealed his identity through tears, saying, "I am Joseph, your brother," the Messiah stands before his kin. The shock is not one of condemnation, but of overwhelming love. The rejection of the past is met with the open arms of the present, and the collective soul of the nation finally finds its rest. This redemptive exchange transforms the very fabric of reality. The betrayal, the centuries of misunderstanding, and the pain of the diaspora are traded for an unconditional bond that cannot be broken. It is a family reunion of cosmic proportions. As the eyes of the nation are opened, the spiritual atmosphere of the planet undergoes a seismic shift. The world, which had watched Israel's isolation with a mix of pity, confusion, and indifference, now witnesses a transformation that defies natural laws. This is the life from the dead that the Apostle Paul spoke of in his letter to the Romans. If their temporary rejection led to the reconciliation of the world, their acceptance acts as a spiritual resurrection for all of humanity. The scales falling from their eyes trigger a global awakening, a clarity that pierces through the cynicism and confusion of the modern age. The geopolitical storms that once threatened to consume the land are stilled by a peace that passes understanding. In this final restoration, a fountain is opened for the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, a fountain for cleansing as promised in Zechariah. This is not a physical spring, but a spiritual cleansing that heals the wounds of history and washes away the stains of the long journey home. The search for security is over, for the nation has found its true identity in the king they once overlooked. The hidden prophecy is no longer a secret. It is the cornerstone of a new world order, defined by the presence of the one who was lost, but is now found. The Creator's faithfulness to his covenant stands vindicated before all of creation. Every promise made to the patriarchs, every word whispered to the prophets, and every tear shed in the diaspora finds resolution in this moment of recognition. Jerusalem, once the center of conflict, becomes the ultimate city of peace, a light to the nations that can never be extinguished. As the veil continues to thin, the call to watch the signs remains urgent. The restoration of Israel is the unfolding of a divine masterpiece that ends in a fountain of grace, proving that even after 2,000 years, a brother's love can still save the world. The long night of wandering has ended, and the star has risen over the mountains of Zion, signaling a peace that will never fade.